The galaxy had seen wars, extinctions, empires rising and falling, but nothing compared to the sight now gathering in the dark void beyond the frontier. The Vericon Armada, a fleet spoken of only in frightened whispers, emerged from hyperspace like a storm of black metal. 10,000 war carriers. Planet crackers the size of continents. Weapons capable of boiling oceans and breaking moons. For centuries, this fleet had destroyed any species foolish enough to resist the Vericon dominion. And now, for the first time in history, they came for Earth. Humanity will not last a single hour, proclaimed High Marshal Zorith, his reptilian eyes watching holoscreens filled with battle formations. They are a primitive species. Unorganized. Emotionally unstable. Their homeworld is undefended. This war will be efficient. The Alien Council chamber murmured with agreement. For generations, humans had been known across the galaxy as a young, reckless species. Brave, yes, but technologically inferior. Annoyingly clever at times, but ultimately insignificant. Only one alien disagreed. Marshal, said Counselor Ravari, a slender, crystalline being whose voice chimed like glass bells, our intelligence reports note that humans have adapted extremely quickly in every previous conflict. They improvise. They evolve. They break, Zorith interrupted sharply. Like all lesser species. He ended the discussion with a gesture. The war was already decided. Or so he believed. Far across space, aboard the human flagship HMS Horizon, Captain Elias Grant studied the same battlefield projections. His officers waited in tense silence. The hologram showed a swarm of red Vericon ships dwarfing the tiny blue cluster that represented Earth's defense forces. Mere hundreds of vessels. The difference was laughable. Or terrifying. Grant exhaled slowly. They brought an entire extinction armada, for one small species. He smirked. We should be honored. Beside him, Commander Lyra Hayes frowned. Sir, the numbers are impossible. No battle plan favors us. Every simulation ends in disaster. Grant didn't answer. He walked to the wide observation window, staring at the endless stars. His reflection looked tired, dark hair messy, uniform creased, eyes carrying the weight of a war humanity should not have been able to fight. Yet something burned behind those eyes. Something dangerous. Hayes, he said quietly, do you know why aliens always underestimate us? She blinked. Because we're smaller? Fewer? Less advanced? No, he turned, voice steady as carved steel. Because they measure intelligence in centuries. We measure it in minutes. A spark flickered across the bridge crew. They'd followed Captain Grant through battles they should have lost. He always found a path. Always saw an angle others missed. He was the kind of human the galaxy didn't know existed. Not yet. Minutes later, Earth's diplomatic channel opened. The Vericon High Marshal appeared, towering and armored, scales shimmering like polished obsidian. Human leader, Zorith sneered, your species has two choices, unconditional surrender, or extinction. Grant folded his arms. There's a third option. Zorith laughed. What third option could your frail kind possibly offer? Grant stepped closer, eyes unwavering. You turn around, he said, and live. The Council of Vericon officers erupted in angry hisses. Zorith's voice deepened. You dare threaten the most powerful armada ever assembled? Grant shrugged. You brought the strongest armada the galaxy has ever seen, and you still only need one captain to stop it. Zorith leaned forward. You are either fearless or insane. Both, Grant replied. It's a human thing. The transmission cut. Silence filled the bridge. Hayes whispered, Sir, what exactly is the plan? Grant tapped the hologram. The lights dimmed. A complex series of maneuvers, energy signatures, wormhole vectors, and gravitational traps appeared, far too complex for the crew to interpret at first glance. But gradually their eyes widened. This wasn't a battle plan. It was a trap. Built from physics, improvisation, and a level of audacity that bordered on madness. Grant said softly, they think our weakness is our size. Our numbers. Our technology. He smirked. Our real strength is something else. And that is? Hayes asked. Simple. He turned to the stars. They don't think like us. On the Vericon flagship, Marshal Zorith felt something he had not felt in centuries. Unease. Marshal, an officer clicked nervously. Human fleet repositioning. Odd movements. Random patterns. Zorith growled. Plot the attack. Crush them instantly. The armada advanced. Earth waited. But Captain Grant was ready. And the galaxy? was about to witness the moment humans stopped being underestimated. Forever. The Veracon Armada moved through space like a living nightmare. Their ships, built from dark alloy mined from collapsed stars, swallowed light as they advanced. Super dreadnoughts aligned their planet-breaker cannons. Swarms of fighter vessels poured from hive carriers like angry hornets. Every warship hummed with the cold certainty of victory. Inside the Veracon flagship Oblivion Spear, High Marshal Zorth studied a three-dimensional map showing Earth's defense line. The humans had arranged their ships in a spread-out, fragmented arc, positioning that looked disorganized and confused. Pitiful, Zorth muttered. Their command structure must be collapsing. But Counselor Rivari tilted her shimmering head. The pattern is not random, she whispered. It looks chaotic, but the spacing is intentional. Symmetrical in its own way. Impossible, Zorth snapped. Humans lack the discipline for coordinated strategy at this scale. Rivari quietly replied, or they hide their discipline behind apparent chaos. Zorth dismissed her with a wave. Begin the attack. Aboard the HMS Horizon, Captain Elias Grant watched the first waves of the Veracon assault spread across the holographic projection. Enemy fighters outnumbered human vessels 50-1. Capital ships overshadowed Earth's cruisers like mountains overshadowing ants. Yet Grant's eyes narrowed with focus, not fear. Commander Hayes, he said calmly, activate Phase 1. She swallowed. All ships confirm? On my authority. Hayes relayed the command. Across the scattered human defense line, ships began transmitting encrypted pulses, bursts of data that appeared meaningless to the untrained eye but carried precise timings. The bridge crew felt the tremor of engines shifting power. Grant stepped forward. Signal the fleet, he said. Begin the drift. Human ships suddenly began moving, not in straight lines but in erratic, unpredictable arcs. Some rotated. Some accelerated. Others slowed to a crawl. To any normal strategist it looked like complete chaos. To Captain Grant it was a masterpiece. Commander Hayes whispered, Sir, the Veracons will think we're panicking. Grant smiled. Exactly. On the Oblivion Spear, Zorth burst into laughter. Look at them, he roared. Their formations are falling apart. Officers hissed approval. But Rivari stared deeply at the movements. Something about it felt wrong. The timing, the way the human ships drifted, the angles they created, felt like a trap. Marshal, she said quietly, the humans are not panicking. They are positioning. For what? Zorth scoffed. Suicide. Rivari's crystalline skin glowed faintly. Something more. Something calculated. Zorth dismissed her concerns with a wave of his armored claw. You overestimate them, Counselor. Humans are impulsive mammals. They react emotionally, not logically. He leaned closer to the display. This battle is already won. Human battle channels erupted with static, shouting, and explosions. Veracon fighters swarmed like locusts. Plasma bolts streaked across the void. A dozen human frigates were destroyed in the first 10 minutes. But through the storm, Captain Grant remained composed. Commander Hayes, he said, are the Veracons fully committed to their attack vector? Hayes scanned the data. Yes. Their formation is tightening. No flank protection. They're aiming to break through the center and hit Earth directly. Grant tapped the holographic map. The pattern of human ship movements formed a crescent, then a spiral, then something like a funnel, invisible unless viewed from the right angle. The Veracons did not see it. Not yet. Perfect, Grant whispered. Another human cruiser exploded. Alarms rang. The bridge shook. Hayes turned to him, frazzled. Sir, we're losing ships. We expected that, Grant said. Phase 1 is sacrifice. Phase 2 is survival. And Phase 3, she asked. Grant's eyes hardened. A single word left his lips. Domination. The Veracon main line surged forward. Marshal, an officer announced, we have penetrated 40% of the human defense line. Estimated time to break their core formation, 6 minutes. Zorth smirked. Humans crumble fast. But Rivari stepped forward. Marshal, the human flagship. It has not moved. Zorth frowned. What? She highlighted the HMS Horizon. While every other ship drifted, dodged, or retaliated, the Horizon remained perfectly still, centered like the calm eye of a storm. It's observing, Rivari whispered. Waiting. Measuring us. Zorth's jaw tightened. Fire on that ship. Now. The order cascaded through the Veracon fleet. But instead of fear, Captain Grant felt victory approaching. Commander Hayes, he said, execute Phase 2. Hayes nodded sharply. All units activate gravity wells. Across the battlefield, small human vessels released experimental dark field generators. Unstable prototypes the galaxy believed humanity lacked the intellect to operate. Space began to bend. Vericon ships suddenly felt their engines struggling as invisible currents dragged at their hulls, pulling them slightly off course. Zoratha's eyes widened. What trick is this? Grant watched calmly. You underestimate us, he whispered to the empty air between them. And that is the last mistake any enemy makes. The Vericon formation wobbled, just enough. Just enough for Phase 3. Grant breathed in. Commander Hayes, he said, voice cold as iron. Lock them in. Hayes pressed the final command. And the battlefield changed. Not visibly. Not loudly. But the Vericon Armada had just fallen into the first human-made strategic gravity trap in galactic history. Zorath didn't know it yet. But Captain Grant had already won the opening battle. For a moment, the battlefield looked unchanged. Lasers still flashed. Explosions lit the dark. Human ships still drifted like broken shards. The Vericon Armada still advanced like a tidal wave of black fire. But deep within the fabric of space, something subtle, something dangerous, shifted. The experimental human gravity wells activated in synchronized pulses, bending space just a fraction of a degree at precisely timed intervals. The effect was microscopic, but multiplied across dozens of emitters, spaced according to Captain Grant's impossible calculations, the distortion became a web. Invisible, silent, deadly. And the Vericons had flown right into it. On the Oblivion Spear, Marshal Zoratha's officers began shouting. Marshal. Navigation drift detected. Course deviation. We are pulling off vector. Engine output decreasing by 7%. Zorath slammed his fist onto the railing. Stabilize. Immediately. But the officers struggled. It's not us, Marshal. The space around us is shifting. Zorath snarled. Impossible. No species has the technology to warp local gravity fields at this. His voice stopped. Because on the hologram, human ships began realigning. Not drifting. Not panicking. Moving into a pattern. And Zorath finally saw it. A circle. No, a ring. A gravitational kill zone. A trap so massive, so audacious, no other species would dare even imagine it. Except humans. Zorath whispered in disbelief. They shaped the battlefield. Counselor Rivari finally spoke, her voice slow, almost reverent. They forced our Armada into the center. And now, we cannot escape. On the HMS Horizon, Commander Hayes stared at the data streams pouring across her display. It's working, she whispered. Their entire formation is drifting inward. Exactly as predicted. Grant nodded calmly. Good. Prepare Phase 3. The crew exchanged glances, awed, terrified, exhilarated. The plan they had rehearsed was theoretical. Even the best human scientists gave only 30% odds of success. But Captain Grant wasn't relying on odds. He relied on instinct. He relied on the one thing humanity possessed more than any species in the galaxy. The ability to do the impossible when the impossible mattered most. Sir, Hayes said, their ships are firing wildly. They're trying to hit the emitters. Grant nodded. Let them try. He turned to Tactical Officer Wren. Status of the decoy beacons? All functioning, sir. Vericons are hitting empty space. Grant smirked. Good. Keep the illusion alive. Zorath growled in frustration as blast after blast missed the human gravity wells. Why can't we hit them? He roared. Rivari answered. Because those are not the real emitters. The humans projected false signatures. Zoratha's eyes widened. They what? They are hiding the true positions. The beacons are decoys. Rivari turned slowly toward him. Humans lied on the battlefield. Zorath hissed. It is dishonorable. Rivari's crystalline voice rang like a cold bell. Humans do not play by our rules. She turned back to the hologram. They play to win. Inside the gravity ring, Vericon ships collided, scraping hulls, adjusting frantically, wasting precious seconds. Fighters spiraled out of control. Cruisers drifted off course. Even their massive fortress ships felt the drag pulling them toward the trap's center. Zorath gritted his teeth. Breakthrough. All vessels accelerate at maximum thrust. But acceleration only made things worse. The more energy they poured into their engines, the tighter the trap pulled. Grant had designed it that way. Hayes watched the Vericon chaos unfold. Sir, they're falling apart. This is incredible. Grant clasped his hands behind his back. We're not done. He pointed to the screen. Phase 3. Initiate the Dawn Breakers. The bridge fell silent. The Dawn Breakers were not ordinary ships. They were experimental assault cruisers, prototypes built in secret, equipped with humanity's newest invention, photon lance weapons that could pierce shields like spears of condensed light. The galaxy believed such weapons were theoretical. Grant had 8 of them. Hidden. Waiting. Now they emerged from behind Earth's shadow, engines glowing like burning stars. Zorth froze. What are those ships? Rivari whispered, human prototypes. We have no data on them. Her crystalline skin flickered with fearful admiration. They hid these from the galaxy. Zorth snarled, destroy them immediately. The command came too late. The Dawn Breakers entered attack formation, each locking onto a separate Veracon super dreadnought trapped in the gravity ring. Grant raised his hand. Fire. The universe lit up. 8 blinding beams of white gold energy sliced across the void, ripping through Veracon armor as if it were paper. Shields collapsed. Reactor cores split open like fruit. One dreadnought exploded. Then a second. Then a third. Marshal Zorth watched the strongest ships in his armada die in less than 10 seconds. His voice cracked. This cannot be happening. We are the Dominion. But Rivari whispered the words no Veracon had ever imagined hearing. Humans are exceeding us. Grant examined the battlefield calmly. Commander Hayes, he said, Phase 3. Collapse the ring. Hayes hesitated. But sir, that means? Grant nodded. Yes, it's time. Hayes gave the order. The gravity well synchronized. Space buckled. The ring collapsed inward. And the entire Veracon armada was slammed together. Thousands of ships pulled into violent collision, crushing each other, tearing apart in a storm of metal and fire. Zorth screamed as the Oblivion Spear shook violently. What are they doing? Rivari closed her glowing eyes. Winning. On the horizon, the bridge watched in stunned silence. Grant spoke softly. Humans may be underestimated. He turned. But never outplayed. The Veracon armada, strongest in the galaxy, was collapsing. And the galaxy was beginning to realize humanity was not prey. Humanity was the apex predator. The Veracon armada, once the darkest storm the galaxy had ever witnessed, now spiraled into ruin. Gravity tore ships from their formations, slamming them sideways, dragging them into collisions with their own allies. Fire engulfed cruisers. Battleships broke apart like cracked bones. The void glittered with the debris of what had been an unstoppable force only minutes before. Yet even as destruction filled the stars, Captain Elias Grant's voice remained quiet and measured. Maintain distance, he instructed. Do not enter the collapse zone until the web fully disintegrates. Commander Hayes nodded. Understood, sir. Our ships are holding steady. Grant's eyes traced every explosion, every distortion, every dying Veracon signal. He had expected this outcome. Engineered it. Forced it with a level of precision the Veracons never believed humans capable of. But something inside him remained cold. This wasn't victory yet. Not until the Dominion broke. And he knew they would fight to their last breath. Inside the Oblivion Spear, chaos spread like wildfire. The entire super dreadnought shuddered under the pull of the collapsing gravity ring. Alien officers scrambled to regain control. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles. Emergency lights flickered crimson across the command deck. High Marshal Zorth roared, reverse gravity. Increase stabilizers. Divert all power. But the ship continued to lurch sideways, dragged by invisible forces. Counselor Rivari held tightly to a railing as she watched structural integrity readings drop across the screen. It is useless, Marshal. Their trap is too precise. We cannot break free. Zorth snarled. I will not accept this. We are the Dominion. Unbroken for 1,000 years. He slammed a clawed fist against the console. And we will not fall to humans. But Rivari's tone held a quiet, haunting truth. You underestimate them because they do not follow the logic of ancient empires. They invent where others copy. They adapt where others stagnate. They risk everything to achieve the impossible. Her crystalline voice dimmed. And in war, that makes them terrifying. Zorth stared at her, breathing heavily as the Oblivion Spear groaned under the pressure. On the human flagship, Tactical Officer Wren pointed to new readings. Captain, Veracon reinforcements detected at warp boundary. Grant's brows lowered. How many? 27 carriers. 2 fortress ships. Hayes cursed under her breath. They're bringing in the second wave. Grant exhaled, his expression turning thoughtful, calculating. Of course they are, he murmured. They always respond with overwhelming force. He stepped forward, eyes locked on the enemy's entry vectors. Ready Dawnbreaker Squadrons Beta and Gamma. Bring the horizon to full burn. Hayes hesitated. Sir, that puts us directly between both Veracon waves. Grant nodded. Exactly. Hayes stared at him. Sir, that's suicide. Only if we fight them conventionally, Grant said. But we won't. His voice sharpened. We're going to break their morale. He tapped the display. The reinforcements were arriving in perfect Dominion formation. Disciplined, orderly, believing the battle was still theirs. They think they're about to join a victory, Grant said softly. Let's show them the truth. The horizon surged forward, engines flaring like blue suns. Ahead, the second wave of Veracon ships emerged from hyperspace, towering carriers lined with heavy cannons. Their communications opened immediately. Human flagship, boomed a voice, you are surrounded. Surrender now and your death will be swift. Grant didn't hesitate. He activated the channel. His voice echoed across the reinforcements' bridge decks. If you value your lives, he said calmly, turn around. A shocked silence followed. Then alien laughter. Human, your entire defense line is gone. Your fleet is dust. You stand alone. Grant stepped forward, gaze steady and deadly. Look behind you. Confused voices rose among the Veracon reinforcements. What is he? Check the rear scanners. Then they looked, and the sight broke them. The once great First Armada was collapsing in a twisted vortex of fire and wreckage. Thousands of ships crushed together, exploding in bursts of molten light. The collapse ring glowed like a dying star. It was not a battlefield anymore. It was a graveyard. The reinforcements froze in horror. Grant's voice lowered to a chilling whisper. Your strongest fleet came to destroy us. His eyes narrowed. And you're looking at what's left of it. Panic swept through the Veracon second wave. Impossible. This must be a trick, an illusion. No, the signatures are real. Their fortress ship captains screamed conflicting orders. Some demanded immediate retreat. Others insisted on avenging the fallen. Their formation broke. Discipline shattered. They were no longer an organized fleet. They were a frightened mob. Grant turned to Hayes. Target the carrier's communication arrays. No lethal shots, demoralization only. Human beams streaked across space, slicing antennas, severing transmitters, cutting the Veracon fleet into isolated pockets. Hayes looked stunned. Sir, they're scattering. Their morale is collapsing. Grant nodded once. Good. When morale breaks, empires crumble. He turned back toward the ruin of the First Armada, expression resolute. This battle isn't just about victory. His voice lowered. It's about sending a message. On the Oblivion Spear, Zorith watched the reinforcements flee. His knees trembled. No, the Dominion fears nothing. We are the galaxy's rulers. We do not retreat. Rivari's voice was soft. And yet, they run. Zorith shook violently. This is not possible. Not to humans. Rivari turned to face him, her crystalline eyes glowing with a mixture of fear and awe. Marshal, she whispered, this is the beginning of a new age. And humanity is rising. On the horizon, Grant straightened. Commander Hayes, he said, prepare for final engagement. Hayes nodded. Sir, what's our objective? Grant stared at the Veracon flagship, the heart of the Dominion's pride. We finish this. In Grant's eyes, there burned a fire the galaxy had never seen. The fire of a human who refused to kneel. And now the Dominion would kneel instead. The space between the human flagship HMS Horizon and the Veracon superdreadnought Oblivion Spear crackled with tension. The ruined remains of the First Armada drifted in glowing, burning chunks, silent witnesses to a war that had shifted in a way no one in the galaxy could have predicted. Commander Hayes braced herself against her console as the horizon moved closer to the colossal black warship. Sir, she said, voice tight, the Oblivion Spear is wounded but still armed. Their main cannons are charging. Grant nodded, eyes cold. Good. Let them fire. Hayes turned to him sharply. Sir? Grant stepped toward the center of the bridge. His officers watched him with a mixture of trust and awe. Every decision he had made so far, every calculated risk, brought humanity from certain extinction to shocking dominance. And yet, he carried no pride in his expression. Only purpose. Prepare the horizon for phase shield cycling, Grant commanded. The crew gasped. Lieutenant Wren spoke first. Sir, the phase shield is unstable. It's a prototype. If it collapses mid-cycle. Grant finished the sentence calmly. The ship evaporates. Yes. The bridge fell silent. But Grant's voice remained steady. This is the only way to get close enough. Aboard the Oblivion Spear, the atmosphere teetered between rage and panic. Flames flickered along upper decks. Coolant dripped from damaged conduits. The Veracon crew fought desperately to stabilize systems. But the greatest instability burned inside High Marshal Zorth himself. They dare approach us? He snarled. They dare. Rivari answered softly, Captain Grant knows something. Humans never gamble without hidden purpose. Zorth slammed his fist so hard the command console cracked. We still have our spear cannon. One shot will break their flagship in half. He leaned toward the projection of the horizon, eyes glowing with fury. Charge the main weapon. Officers obeyed, claws flying across controls. The massive crystalline core at the center of the ship began glowing black-red, gathering enough destructive energy to shatter a moon. Rivari watched carefully. Marshal, she said, the humans are accelerating. Zorth hissed. Let them come. They will die before they reach us. The spear cannon reached 80% charge. Then 90%. Zorth raised his arm dramatically. Prepare to fire. On the horizon, alarms chimed as the phase shield activated. A shimmering haze enveloped the ship, bending its outline like a mirage. Shield unstable, Hayes warned. We have 30 seconds before it destabilizes. Then we only need 20, Grant said. The horizon surged forward, engines screaming as they overwhelmed stress limits. Deck lights flickered. Pressure doors sealed. The hull groaned. But Grant didn't waver. Open communication channel, he ordered. Hayes complied. Grant's voice echoed across the Veracon flagship bridge. Zorth, he said calmly, stand down. Zorth bared his fangs. You stand down, human. The spear cannon hummed, building to full power. Grant spoke again. This battle is already over. Zorth roared, I will carve your world into ash. Then he raised his claw in final command. Fire. A black-red beam tore through space, vast, monstrous, pure destruction. It struck the horizon and passed through it. Zorth froze. What is that? Rivari's crystalline eyes widened. A phase-shifted shield. They altered their molecular resonance. They're out of sync with physical matter. Zorth stared in disbelief. Impossible. Yet the evidence burned in front of him. The horizon had become a ghost. Untouchable. Unstoppable. Rivari whispered, humans created technology that even our finest minds believed impossible. Zorth shook, trembling with blind hatred. Kill them. Kill them. But the horizon was already too close. Grant turned to Hayes. Full stop. Prepare boarding torpedoes. Hayes's eyes widened. Sir, you're going into the flagship? Grant nodded. Ending the Dominion requires more than destroying their ships. He stared at the towering dreadnought ahead. It requires breaking their will. The horizon slammed to a halt just meters from the spear's hull. Mechanical clamps locked onto alien metal. Ports aligned. Grant spoke into the comms. Marine Teams Alpha, Bravo, and Delta, launch. 3 armored boarding torpedoes blasted into the spear's flank, drilling through the armored hull with explosive teeth. Screams and alarms erupted throughout the Veracon ship. Grant turned to leave the bridge. Commander Hayes, he said, you have the horizon. Keep her alive. Hayes nodded firmly. Yes, sir. He paused before exiting. And Hayes, if I don't return? She cut him off sharply. You will return, sir. Humans don't do not returning. Grant smiled faintly. Good. That's why you're my second. He stepped into the lift. The doors closed. Inside the Oblivion Spear, the shockwave of the human boarding assault spread quickly. Marine pods unfolded, releasing squads of armored soldiers. Silent, efficient, lethal. The Veracon defenders rushed in. A towering brute roared as it charged a human marine. The marine fired once. A blue pulse ripped through the alien's exoskeleton. The brute collapsed. Human marines advanced deeper. They moved like shadows. Precise. Coordinated. Relentless. And at their center marched Captain Grant, plasma pistol in one hand and a tactical blade in the other. Zorth watched the invasion on the screens, trembling with fury. They breach our hulls, they fight inside my ship. He looked toward Rivari, expecting fear. Instead he found something else. Admiration. Rivari whispered, "Your armada failed. Your reinforcements fled. Your flagship is invaded." She met his gaze. "Marshal, we are witnessing a power we never measured correctly." Her voice echoed like crystal breaking. "Humans are not prey." In the distant corridors, explosions echoed, signals of the human advance. Zorith roared in final denial. "No. I will crush them with my own claws." He stormed toward the throne bridge. Rivari remained still, staring at the screens, staring at the human captain leading the charge through the Dominion's heart. And she whispered, "Captain Grant, the galaxy will not forget this." The corridors of the Oblivion Sphere were built to intimidate. Towering archways, armored bulkheads, pulsating red conduits, everything designed to dwarf any being who stepped inside. But the humans didn't shrink in fear. They moved like stormwinds through the metallic labyrinth, breaching bulkheads, securing junctions, pushing deeper. The Dominion's strongest warship had become a battleground. Captain Elias Grant led the vanguard. His boots hit the deck with silent purpose. Smoke drifted around him. Sparks burst from overhead pipes. Human Marines flanked him, advancing with fluid precision. "Captain," Sergeant Locke said, "resistance increasing. They're throwing elites at us." Grant nodded. "Good. That means we're close." A Vericon warrior leapt from a side corridor, massive, armored, claws glowing with crackling energy. It roared and slashed toward Grant. Grant sidestepped, blade flashing. One strike severed the creature's arm. The second drove into its throat. The warrior fell without a word. He moved on. Nothing slowed him. Nothing distracted him. Ahead lay the throne bridge, the heart of the Dominion's command. He knew Zorith waited there. Humans had fought this battle for survival. But now Grant fought it for the future. On the human flagship horizon, Commander Hayes monitored Grant's progress with a tight jaw. "Alpha Squad nearing the command deck," Rin reported. "But the Spear's internal defenses are waking up. Auto turrets going live, doors sealing, pressure traps arming." Hayes cut him off. "Grant will handle it. Keep the horizon positioned. We move only on his command." Her eyes drifted to the massive dreadnought filling the view screen. The same ship that once symbolized the Dominion's absolute power. Now it looked desperate. She whispered, "Sir, stay alive." Inside the Oblivion Spear's throne bridge, High Marshal Zorith armed himself. His armor plates, forged from Darkstar metal, folded over his body with mechanical clicks. His claws extended. His twin ion blades hummed with lethal energy. He trembled, not with fear but with rage. "He steps into my ship," Zorith growled. "He cuts down my warriors. He destroys my armada." He slammed his fist against the armrest of his massive throne. "This human must die." Counselor Rivari stood off to the side, her crystalline form shimmering faintly. "Marshal," she said softly, "you will not win this duel." Zorith snarled, "You dare speak defeat to me?" "I speak truth," she replied with calm finality. "Humans have surpassed us. Grant is not just a soldier, he is evolution accelerated. Adaptation in human form." Zorith roared, "I am the Dominion." "And he," Rivari whispered, "is the future." She stepped aside. Zorith didn't notice. Rage consumed him. He waited, blades humming. Grant reached the towering doors of the throne bridge. Marine teams secured the surrounding halls, eliminating the last waves of defenders. The air hung thick with smoke and ion discharge. Sergeant Locke approached. "Sir, we'll breach together." Grant shook his head. "No. I go alone." Marines exchanged uneasy glances. Locke stepped forward. "Captain, respectfully, that's suicide." Grant checked his pistol's charge. "Zorith won't negotiate. He won't surrender. This ends with a duel or a massacre." Locke swallowed. "Then at least let us back you up after." Grant placed a hand on the sergeant's shoulder. "Hold the line. If I fall, you finish the mission." Locke bowed his head reluctantly. "Good luck, sir." Grant turned to the door panel and drove his blade into it. Sparks flew. Circuits burst. The massive doors slid open with a screech of metal. He entered the throne bridge. The doors shut behind him. Zorith stood upon his elevated command platform like a living monument of wrath. "You come alone," he rumbled. "Brave or foolish?" Grant lifted his blade, eyes unwavering. "You wanted humanity on its knees." His voice hardened. "You got me instead." Zorith bared jagged teeth. "I will rip your species from the stars." Grant stepped forward, unafraid. You couldn't stop us with 10,000 ships. He raised his blade. What makes you think you can stop one man? Zorth roared and charged. The duel began. Zorth swung first, an arc of crackling energy strong enough to slice through starship hull. Grant ducked, rolled and struck upward. Sparks exploded as blade met armor. Zorth counterattacked, slamming Grant across the room. The human hit the floor but rose immediately. Grant charged, faster than Zorth expected. His strikes were smaller, tighter, surgical. He targeted joints, weak points, exposed wiring in the marshal's armor. Zorth staggered, then howled in fury. You fight like a cornered animal. Grant wiped blood from his lip. No, he said, I fight like a human. The words enraged Zorth further. He launched into a blur of savage attacks. Grant narrowly avoided several killing blows, redirecting momentum, absorbing impacts, striking with measured precision. Every second the battle continued, Grant adapted. Zorth slowed. Grant accelerated. Zorth grew desperate. Grant became relentless. Finally, Zorth roared, lunging for a final, wild strike. Grant sidestepped and drove his blade into the junction between Zorth's armor plates. The blade pierced deep. Zorth froze, eyes wide. You, he whispered, voice fading, are an anomaly. Grant leaned close. No, he said softly. I'm human. Zorth collapsed. The Dominion's greatest warlord was dead. Silence filled the bridge. Then Ravari stepped from the shadows. Grant tensed, but she raised no weapon. Captain Elias Grant, she said, her crystalline voice trembling with awe, you have changed the galaxy. Grant didn't answer. He simply turned and walked out of the throne bridge. His Marines stared as the doors opened. Sergeant Locke exhaled. Sir? Grant sheathed his blade. It's done, he said quietly. Prepare for extraction. But deep in his eyes burned the truth. This wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of humanity's rise. The battle for the Oblivion Spear ended with a single message from Captain Elias Grant to all human ships. The Marshal is dead. The war is ours. But across the galaxy the struggle was not finished. The Dominion's remaining fleets still fought with desperate fury. Without Zorth's command, they acted like scattered beasts, attacking anything that moved. Battles raged in isolated star systems, on forgotten worlds, and in the dark stretches between suns. Humanity had won the heart of the war, but they still had to win the galaxy's future. The horizon hovered over the captured Oblivion Spear, docking clamps securing the massive dreadnought. Commander Hayes paced the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Enemy reinforcements approaching, Wren reported. 3 Dread-class carriers, 7 destroyers and heavy frigates. Hayes exhaled sharply. They're still trying to avenge him. A voice crackled through the comm. Grant. Commander, he said, calm but urgent, begin withdrawal procedures. Humans on all decks. We're evacuating the spear. Hayes frowned. Sir, if we leave now. This ship won't last, Grant cut in. The Dominion booby-trapped its core. Zorth planned to detonate it if he lost. We have minutes. Hayes froze. Wren's eyes widened. If the spear explodes here, it'll destroy every ship nearby, including ours. Hayes lifted her head. Prepare emergency jump coordinates. Pull all squads back. No hesitation. The bridge burst into motion. Officers shouted orders. Engines roared to life. Grant, leading the last team through the smoke-filled corridors of the spear, spoke again. And Commander, leave the area the moment we're aboard. If we're late, don't wait. Hayes clenched her fist. Yes, Captain. Inside the collapsing dreadnought, Grant and his Marines sprinted down a shaking corridor. Alarms wailed. Flames burst from ruptured conduits. The entire ship trembled violently. Core meltdown in progress, a robotic voice announced over the intercom. Evacuate immediately. Sergeant Locke pressed a hand to his helmet. Sir, the blast doors ahead aren't responding. Grant took one look at the sealed bulkhead and didn't slow. He activated his plasma cutter and sliced a glowing vertical line down the metal. Locke and 2 others joined him, carving through the reinforced layers. Smoke poured out as the metal softened and buckled. The door finally gave way. And behind it, a wave of fire surged toward them. Move! Grant shouted. They dove through the opening as the flames swept past, scorching the walls behind them. Grant hit the deck, rolled and pushed himself up. We keep going, he ordered. Almost there. They rushed into the docking chamber where the Horizon's boarding ramp extended like a lifeline. Hayes herself stood at the top, waving them in. Hurry. Grant motioned his squad up the ramp. Explosions shook the chamber as he took one last look at the massive, dying warship. Then he sprinted. Hayes reached down, grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. Close ramp, she yelled. Seal the locks. The doors slammed shut. Jump drive, go. The horizon streaked forward, engines roaring, leaving the Oblivion Spear behind. Seconds later, a blinding sphere of light swallowed the dreadnought. The shockwave expanded outward, tearing through space. Dominion reinforcements were caught in the blast, shredded by the violent energy surge. The horizon escaped by a margin so thin it felt impossible. Hayes collapsed into her chair, breathing hard. Grant steadied himself on the railing. Status. Rin swallowed. We made it. Barely. Grant nodded once. That's enough. News of Zoratha's death and the destruction of the Oblivion Spear spread across the galaxy faster than light. Dominion-controlled worlds revolted. Species that had been enslaved for centuries rose up. Entire fleets surrendered when they realized humanity had done the impossible. A new council of liberated civilizations gathered above the sanctuary planet Asterion. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion throne stood empty. Representatives from more than 60 species turned toward the humans seated at the round table. Elias Grant, wearing a simple gray uniform, sat at the center. Counselor Ravari, shining like a living constellation, spoke first. The galaxy has seen many conquerors, she said. But humanity is something different. You do not seek domination. You seek survival, justice, and balance. Her crystalline gaze settled on Grant. And you have earned a voice among the stars. The chamber fell silent. Grant rose to speak. Humans were underestimated, he began quietly. We were dismissed as a minor species. But our strength was never in our weapons or our technology. He scanned the room. It was in our spirit. Our refusal to fall. Our ability to adapt. Our belief that no enemy is too big, no fate is final. He took a breath. We didn't fight this war to rule. We fought to live. And we fought to make sure no one else would ever be silenced by fear. Many representatives bowed their heads in agreement. Grant continued. Humanity accepts a seat on this council. We will help rebuild. We will help unite. We will stand with every species that chooses freedom. Soft murmurs of respect echoed across the chamber. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was not the smallest voice in the room. It was the loudest. Later, on the observation deck overlooking the stars, Hayes approached Grant quietly. You know, she said, they're calling us the miracle species out there. Grant chuckled softly. Miracle? No, just stubborn. Hayes smiled. Stubborn enough to rewrite history. Grant looked out at the endless night. Hayes. Yes, sir? He exhaled slowly. This is only the beginning. She nodded. For them? He shook his head. For us. The stars stretched before them, silent, vast, filled with promise. Humanity had risen from the ashes of invasion. Now they stood tall not as survivors, but as equals among the stars. And the galaxy would never underestimate them again.